My question is for Tush James. Will you apologize to President Trump for wasting millions of dollars and the state of New York?
I did ask my family. I did ask some friends. I got their feedback, and based on that, I decided that I could or should take this case. Guilty is the result of a judicial process in which either a jury finds beyond reasonable doubt that somebody did it, or somebody admits to doing it and pleads guilty themselves. Nobody charged is guilty until somebody says they're guilty. If you're asking whether or not people should represent people who, quote, did it, end quote, that's more complicated, because very often somebody is charged who did something, but not it.
The radical left, Soros-backed New York State Attorney General Letitia James, a disaster.
So to begin with, one of the very first people that I started helping was New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who, as everybody knows, was the public official who brought the lawsuit against the Trump companies and Donald Trump when he was not president and family members on grounds of their defrauding the system for the way they had valuated their property, et cetera. That case went to trial, and there was a $500 million judgment pending against him. From the time the investigation started until the verdict, until even now, Donald Trump said that he was going to find a way to take revenge against Attorney General James, and did so by a few months ago having his head of the FHA send a criminal referral to the Department of Justice on some trumped up, hate to use the word, trumped up charge, allegation of her misstating various pieces of property she has had that she's lived in or invested in terms of its loans or mortgages or whatever. And it is just a completely fabricated idea. Sure, there are documents in one or more of the properties that might call it a investment and the other one calls it a second residence, but the definitions depend on whether you're seeking insurance or tax or whatever. Anyway, that was something that he decided to do, and that's the action he took. It has been reported in the last week or so that the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, in some part of New York, has issued subpoenas to the Office of the Attorney General of New York for all of the documents that exist in the office in the case that the AG brought against the National Rifle Association, and then a similar subpoena for all the documents in the Trump cases themselves. What makes that extraordinary is that, of course, it's for every piece of paper in an active case against two different entities, but basically by the Trump administration using their own power to get documents to vindicate the president in his personal capacity. President Trump made clear at the time of the case that was being brought against him that the Attorney General should be jailed, should have retribution against, should have all this revenge happen against her, and he got elected, and guess nobody's surprised, he's putting into place what he said he would do. So again, you're right, these are two different things. Both, by the way, though, the trigger is pulled by the president himself, we have to assume. So there is no basis for the allegation, the requests to the Office of the Attorney General. By that I mean, if you understand the way it works, they don't have to say what it's based on. The press has reported anonymous sources saying that they are doing an investigation against whether the Office of the Attorney General violated the president's civil constitutional rights in bringing the lawsuit, by the way. The defendants in that case, Mr. Trump and others, made those same allegations to defeat the case, to dismiss the case. They brought an injunction in Florida against the case. Every judge who has heard their complaints and their allegations have ruled against them. So they are disconnected. But look, in this situation we find ourselves in August of 2025, just 7 months into this administration, there's nothing that apparently this administration led by President Trump will not do. One more point before we pivot to another case. People should really remember the 1984 famous book written by George Orwell about the use of language. You'll remember that one of the things that President Trump did was appoint and create a department within the Department of Justice called the Weaponization Working Group. It was his alleged reason to look at how he had become the victim of weaponization, but instead what's happened is it has become his own weaponization group. And the Tish James, people should pay attention to the news today. I think you saw two things. On Friday, the New York Post reported that Martin and some goofy person he was with actually went and took pictures outside of Attorney General James's house as if this was a photo opportunity. And I will be addressing that. And then yesterday, he was on one of the Sunday shows, his favorite Fox News show with, I think, Maria Bartiromo, again, railing against Attorney General James in ways that prosecutors are not supposed to do. We are not going to sit idly by when he continues to use the public airwaves to try to prejudice and harass our client. And so that's something that will be addressed. That's the status of the matters against Attorney General James. Ed Martin announced that he was the special attorney for mortgage fraud. It should be that his title is special attorney for mortgage fraud only against Democrats, because his charter was to look into the allegations against AG James and also California Senator Adam Schiff.
Back in April, the federal government issued a criminal referral alleging that your client, Letitia James, committed mortgage fraud. Back then, you sent a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, which included documents and exhibits that you say refute the allegations. But you said something else that was important, warning Bondi against this type of political retribution. So you knew then that the administration was going to double down.
Well, I mean, President Trump campaigned on this. It didn't take him long after getting elected that he created people that would carry this out. I mean, remember, his first choice for Attorney General was Matt Gaetz. I mean, if he was signaling what he was going to use the Department of Justice for. You can say a lot of things about what's supposed to happen between those two places on Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House and the Department of Justice, where I started my career. But the separation is supposed to have existed at some level. I don't think there's been an attorney general that has been willing to carry out the president's wrongdoing as much as Pam Bondi has since, I'd say John Mitchell with President Nixon. So this was something he announced, and it's happening as per the game plan he announced. The idea, though, again, back to this idea of doublespeak, the fact that these cases are now being brought, or that he appointed Ed Martin as a special attorney in his department. What's his department called? The Department of Weaponization.
Yeah.
The idea that this department, that is his idea to address the weaponization that he claims was in the past, is now turning into the nuclear bomb of weaponization in the future, is just another example of what I've just been saying as to how the manipulation of language makes your head spin.
Abby, the Justice Department seems to be operating under the theory that your client, the New York Attorney General Letitia James, may have deprived President Trump of his civil rights with her civil fraud case against him. Your reaction to that?
There could be so many. You know, when I read that, you have to think that the famous author George L. Orwell, who wrote 1984, that coined the famous phrase of doublespeak and the state saying things opposite of what it means. His book, now, what President Trump and the people who carry out his mandate, it makes George Orwell's 1984 look like a Mother Goose nursery rhyme. I mean, it is just beyond comprehension, and we can't get inured to it, Ali. The requests to the Office of Attorney General that you mentioned, to have to do the case the office brought against the NRA, found by a court and jury to have defrauded the people at the organization, or, as you pointed out, the $500 million judgment rendered against the president, his companies, or himself. Those represent the rule of law operating the way it should, correct? I mean, you had process, you had case, you had lawyers. That's what people that were on juries decided was right. And for them now to do this, think about what the request is. They have demanded, through the process of a grand jury, every piece of paper. I want everybody to understand that. Every piece of paper the Office of Attorney General has in its possession that was used in the case against the NRA, and every piece of paper that was used against the case dealing with President Trump and his businesses. Every single. Well, that would be an unprecedented breadth of a request anyway. But if you can have the presidency go against the people who use the courts of law to find him wrong when he was wrong, then they have taken this idea of retribution to places that, as I pointed out before, the authors like George Orwell would have never dreamed in their worst nightmares.
In a letter I referenced that you had sent to Pam Bondi in April, you tried leveling with her as a fellow prosecutor. You wrote, quote, "In your position as Florida's 37th Attorney General and now the nation's top prosecutor, you brought or will bring cases as part of your oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and faithfully discharge the duties of the office. When you do so based on probable cause in a criminal case or an initial finding of civil liability, you're not weaponizing. You are carrying out your sworn duty. No one is better than you to recognize that Attorney General James is being targeted for having done the same things in her work, including the case against Mr. Trump and his companies," end quote. Tell me about this. Did you get a response to that?
Well, when we sent the letter, there was deafening silence. I didn't even get an acknowledgement that it was received, let alone a conversation about what I said. So let that serve as whatever it is and their answer to my request. I also, in that letter, as you saw, she had quoted her in her confirmation hearings about what she said she would not do to become somebody carried out political retribution, which, like so many of the statements people are making to get themselves confirmed by the Senate, was good for the day that they said it, and then 5 minutes later, it doesn't become something that they carry forward. And one more thing to say about this so-called mortgage fraud allegation. Let's just call what it is, because I did set this out in the letter as well. You know, if you have a file on your house, bunches of pieces of paper, and one of those pieces of paper say that it was a residence when it was an investment property, or vice versa, but every other piece of paper in the same file makes that clear, so that you have one that might have had a box checked wrong, that's not the subject of a criminal investigation or a case. It could be a mistake.
By
it
a
could be
special
that it's just
attorney.
a different form. Yes, let alone appointing a special attorney. And on that, let's also point out something that I'm sure maybe people haven't figured this out. So what had happened in the last 2 days, Attorney General Bondi appointed the person who couldn't get himself confirmed to be an actual prosecutor, the person who they wanted to be the confirmed U.S. attorney here in the District of Columbia, to be a special attorney, which is a designation under the regulations and rules for a specific purpose. And he is charged with pursuing this investigation of so-called mortgage impropriety against both Attorney General Letitia James and U.S. Senator Adam Schiff of California, both of which have reasons to have said on their property documents what they did. But everybody note what was missing.
Yep.
Apparently, they didn't decide to include Attorney General of Texas Ken Paxton, who news reports indicate that he has 3 residences, 3 homes, all of which he has declared to be his primary residence. So I guess it means that in the world of weaponization, it's only weaponized against Democrats, that the idea of selective enforcement is fine, and that only Democrats get scrutinized, and Republicans who do no better, and perhaps a lot worse, get a free pass as long as there's an R in front of their political party.
You represent, on the basis of what you think to be the law, Democrats, Republicans. You're not a partisan guy in terms of clients you take on. But this is a really important consideration. If the government comes after you, Letitia James, Adam Schiff, but Joe Schmo, you have to have legal representation, and that's super expensive because you need somebody like you who actually understands the system.
Well, look, I've said this in many contexts. Let me make clear 2 things. You say it one way, I'd like to say it a different way. I have basically challenged the overreach of federal agencies in every administration since Ronald Reagan's. Didn't matter whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration. If the government overreaches, then lawyers' job is to put the government in the right place. You know, what was that 19th century Senator Carl Schurz who said, "My country, wrong or right? If right to be kept right, if wrong to be set right." That's what lawyers do. And it has not been a partisan filter for my work ever. I've represented, as you know, high-profile Republicans and high-profile Democrats. People keep pointing out that I might be the only person to have represented the child of a Republican president and the child of a Democratic president. So that's not the filter. The filter is if the government acts beyond its power, it is the job of lawyers to set it right. And people forget, and maybe they should remember, that John Adams represented the British troops who were accused of murder in the Boston Massacre and then went on to be president of the United States. It's not a coincidence that President Trump knows that in addition to emasculating Congress, he has to attack the media and he has to attack lawyers, because the media and lawyers were part of the founders' concept of protecting democracy as well. This is a full frontal attack.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.